Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. Back again on a Sunday morning, not as early as last time because last week I filmed at like 6:30 in the morning. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here. But it's quite a cloudy day, but it's autumn is definitely here, and I love autumn. I love this time of year. It just it just makes me smile. The thought of leaves changing, and I always associate autumn with curling up under a blanket watching like favorite films and reading books, and oh, I just love it. So I'm actually really loving that it's a dull day today. A dull autumn day. It's been another busy week as usual. I have only got 5 more working days and then I have got 2 weeks off, and I desperately need the break from work. I haven't had any time off work since the week of my birthday, which was mid-June, and we're at the end of September, so need a break. Need a break. So I'm bloody looking forward to that time off. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading this week, which is Hunting Evil Inside the Ipswich Serial Murders by Paul Harrison and David Wilson. So, in case you are not aware of what this is, it's a true crime case about a serial killer called Stephen Wright, who killed 5 prostitutes in Ipswich in 2006. It's the 30th of October of this year, so in about just over a month's time will be the 15th anniversary of when all of this happened. And I was quite flabbergasted when I realised it was 15 years, which sounds stupid because I know it was 2006, but when you actually put things in perspective and go, actually, how long was that? It's very weird. It's very, very weird to think it's been 15 years. So I've mentioned this before in other videos, but just in case you haven't seen seen those videos, I have this really, sorry, there's an annoying thing on my desk. There we go. It was capturing my eye, and I was like, I can't pull away. I've got to get that off my desk. I have this very, very distinct memory of the final 2 girls, or 2 women, should I say? Sorry, correction, women, because they were adults, all 5 of them, being found. And I was setting up Christmas decorations in my mum and dad's house. I was still living at home at the time, and I was putting like baubles and stuff on the Christmas tree and everything, and it was me and my dad. We were home alone at the time, and that day I think my mum was working or something, and my sister remembers coming over later in the day because we were talking about this case. I don't remember my sister coming over, but the distinct memory I have is this moment with me and my dad, this strange juxtaposition of putting baubles on a Christmas tree and hearing from the TV across the room breaking news that 2 bodies had been found. And then watching the live coverage of forensics with these 2 white tents, which were, I think they were only about 100 or 200 meters apart or something. They were close, but they weren't, they were still far enough to see. And seeing the footage of the police discovering that there was a second body, because they'd found one, and they took the helicopter up to get an aerial shot, and it was one of the guys in the helicopter who said along the lines of, not this is not the exact wording, but along the lines of, "Oh my God, there's another one." And that's how they found Paula, the last victim. And just watching that footage whilst putting up Christmas decorations, that it's just ingrained in my mind. It was a really strange, tense time. I mean, even though I didn't live near Ipswich, or anything, you could feel the tension. And it was a case that over 10 days, 5 women were found dead. Can you imagine that for the people who lived there and such? And around the UK, people were, or at least I remember the feeling of waking up and thinking, have the girls, have the women on the streets of Ipswich survived tonight? And that's a very, very strange feeling to have. So when Steve Wright, the killer, was discovered and was arrested, a very strong sense of relief flooded the UK about this case. But yeah, it was a very, very, very odd time. And it just happened that when I was, in my 2020 year of not buying books, I was watching a lot of crime related videos and documentaries and that. And I realised that David Wilson, who is co-author of this book, he's on pretty much any kind of documentary to do with UK serial killers. He will be on it because he is the #1 UK expert when it comes to serial killings. So yeah, whenever you look out for him, because most likely you've seen a crime documentary relating to a UK crime, if you're interested in that, you have seen him somewhere. It's yeah, he's very, very interesting to listen to and such. And I'd not actually read any of his books, and so I did a Google search just to see what books he had written, and this one popped up, and I was like, you know what, I've never actually read a book about the Ipswich murders, and he's co-authored it, and I really like David Wilson, so why don't I give it a go? And that's why I bought this in my the end of the 2020 no buying books challenge finished. So yeah, so that's why I got this. So on the cover, these are the five women who tragically lost their lives at the hands of Steve Wright, in the order that they were found, but it's not the order that they were killed, because Tanya here, she disappeared first about 2 weeks before Gemma did, but Gemma was found first, then Tanya, and then the others were discovered in the order in which they died. So that's why on the cover Gemma appears before Tanya, but they actually died the other way around. So just FYI. So they range from ages 19 to 39. And what connected them all is that they were all prostitutes, and they all had drug addictions, and they all went into prostitution because of their drug addiction. And what I find most tragic is Paula at the end here. Dear Paula. She actually was interviewed on camera. She had her back to the camera, she had her hood up so she couldn't be identified. A lot of prostitutes in Ipswich spoke to the press and everything, and she was one of them. And she bluntly said, I am afraid that I could be a victim, but I've got no choice. If I am going to survive the next day, I have to be on the streets. I don't have a choice here. It's run the risk of being a victim, or to be able to survive, or knowing that I could die from stuff in my life. Basically, that's me just paraphrasing. I'm not quoting her at all there. And the next day she's gone. And it's just so interesting the way that, looking at this case, how press had to shift kind of their work pattern, because they had to work around the women who worked the red light district in Ipswich. the ladies worked at night, so the press had to work at night, and so it kind of helped and hindered the case. By helped, it meant that the women, they got paid for doing the interviews, so it meant they didn't have to go out, to find customers, as it were, so the press can make sure that they were safe. But at the same time, it meant that because the press were, buzzing around, any punters that were pulling up, seeing the press, drove straight off. But the police needed to know who were coming to that particular, the area and such, looking for one of the women, to know who they are and possibly look into them. So it was very difficult, I think. And it was very, very interesting as well that whilst all this was happening, there were so many police around, there was so many press around. As I said, Paula got interviewed the day before she died, to then have Steve Wright linger underneath all of it and carry on killing women right under their noses, and they couldn't see him, they couldn't find him, as it were. That's just, it's really tough to hear and take that in. I think Steve Wright was eventually discovered, as I said, and it was through DNA that he was discovered. I'm not going to go into any more detail. If you want to read more about it, look him up, Wikipedia, whatever, or read this book. But yeah, Paul Harrison, just so that you know, because as I said, David is our criminologist. He's just, what he knows, the psychology and such of people who commit crimes and such, it's fascinating to listen to. But Paul Harrison was a journalist, and he got told, right, you're going to Ipswich, you're going to be covering this case and such. It was after, I think it was when Gemma had gone missing, that he got told to go. So we had 2 women who were missing at that point. And he arrived and he got a call from his boss and said, right, your first interview, you're going to be interviewing this guy, David Wilson. And, meet him, he's got a taxi, meet him, pay the taxi driver, interview him live on air. So that's what he was told. So the 2 kind of met, just not forced together, but they kind of, it wasn't planned, as it were, that they were going to both meet up in Ipswich and they were going to cover this together. They just happened to kind of collide with each other, and they ended up having further and further discussions. And of course, Paul is looking at it from a journalistic point of view, and David is looking at it from a criminalist point of view, and trying to do a psychiatric kind of profiling, as it were, of the killer, who at the time they didn't know who it was, and asking the questions of, why is he haunting the area that he is and such? How is he able to go unnoticed? And it's absolutely fascinating to read. So yes, so this is known as the definitive account, as stated here. So Paul Harrison broke the story of the actual of the series of murders, and as it says, David Wilson, the #1 expert on serial killers in the UK. So the 2 of them together is quite a powerhouse. So it's written in a very interesting way, and you can clearly see which areas David has written and which areas Paul has written. There's no denying that fact. And to be honest, I don't see that as a bad thing. It's just, what I mean by is that the first section, you're following each of the women on their final day, what their lives were like, who they were related to, that kind of thing. There's interviews with various family members and friends, and yes, you follow each one on of their final day, and then at the point where they're last seen, you then have Steve Wright and his day, the exact same day up to that point where he meets the women, each woman, and then goes on to the next and the next and the next. And it's written in this. It's quite a beautiful flow to it. How the hours pass and such, but you can feel that there's a grim underlining, and you can feel the season. A kind of coldness, and everything to it. So you've got that through the 5, and then you get to the point kind of like where the first body discovered, and then it breaks, and you go to this section about defining what a serial killer is, which is more academic and such, and it's like, okay, so that's David, so the first section's Paul, that's David, and then we're back to that flow of following patterns, but this time it's the pattern of the police investigation, and going through and finding another body, and then it's back looking at specifically talking about serial killers whose victims were prostitutes, and of course talks about Jack the Ripper and such, and other killers throughout history, famous serial killers. So that it's not just focusing on Steve Wright, it looks at other cases as well to explain the psychology of Steve Wright, who then it was revealed was Steve Wright, but yes, but he's looking at it as a profiling. I don't know who this person is. From the stats, from what we know, this is where my mind was, and then it's back to Paul's writing. So you have this. You can tell it's 2 people writing it, but I didn't mind it whatsoever. Some people might be thrown by it, I don't know, but wanted to just flag that. So yeah, we're going all the way through. But what I find so wonderful, and I could just tell that this was going to happen anyway, but to actually read it and have that confirmation, it was good to have that this is totally, utterly respectful to everyone involved, including Pam, who was Steve's partner. And Pam worked nights, so what their routine was that he would drop her at work, she would work through the night, and instead of going home, he would then go to the red light district and pick up a woman or 2 or whatever he felt like doing, which led to the murders. And so he was actually going out, finding a victim, because he just saw them as things, as objects, not as people, kill them, strip them naked, drop them off, go back home for a little bit, and then go and pick Pam up. So Pam had no idea that this was going on, and when it was revealed, she didn't stand by Steve. She was like, he's a monster. I can't believe, this happened right under my nose. I had no idea. And this book is so respectful to all the girls. And it says bluntly, look, they were doing this because they got addicted to drugs. Then they weren't bad people whatsoever. It was circumstance that led them there. And there's bits where it's just absolutely fascinating to read the different support networks that were available in Ipswich at the time in 2006, and since these killings, what support there is now. Well, I should say at the time of writing this book, because this book was written in 2008. So I don't know if those support networks have changed at all since then. But it was very, very interesting to see about how the government were kind of very much wanted to train up people to prevent people from falling on hard times and such, and possibly turning to prostitution. And it's like, yes, okay, but if you think about it, the training up and everything, that's really great, but the entry level jobs that they could possibly get, it'd be very easy for them to go, well, that's nothing compared to what I earn from the street, so which is the better option, that kind of thing. And it asks the question, okay, what is the government actually doing to prevent teens from mainly young people, obviously, but yeah, it was teenage kind of level for all five of these women, sorry. What is the government doing to try and help teens who are in crisis, to prevent them from running away, to prevent them from being on the streets, to prevent this kind of thing from happening? And it kind of goes, come on, government, come on, tell us what you're really doing for that. And I really loved the balls to write that. I really did. And it's very interesting reading this when it asks the question, will this case be forgotten at some point? Will it just become another case amongst crime documentaries? And thinking about it, as I said, in a month's time, it'll be the 15th anniversary since this happened. In all of that time, I've never once seen a memorial to, just a ceremony shown to remember these women. Now, obviously in Ipswich that may happen and it's just not widely known. But why isn't it widely known? And that's really upsetting. That's really upsetting, to think that this is being forgotten. It really is. So I really enjoyed reading this book. It's very sensitive, but it's brutally honest. And it really made me think about things, and it's so sad. And Paula was a mother of 3 whose children were taken off of her, put into care because of her drug addiction. And she wrote this Christmas card to her 3 kids, which is in this book, where she's talking about how much mummy loves you, and I'm really looking forward to us getting back together, because she really hoped that, it was coming up to the end of the year, and in the new year she was gonna, really make changes and get her kids back. And it beams happiness and joy at the thought of being with their children again, and she never saw them. That never got sent. And that's just really tragic. And Annalie, who's there in the middle, she appeared on CCTV footage on a train, which was the last sightings of her, which got sent around, played constantly on the news. It was only about 20 seconds or so, but it was constantly being shown. I vividly remember that. And she was 3 months pregnant. So not only did he take the lives of these 5 women, he took a life of a child. And it's so sad. But what I also love about this book is that it goes, right, well, there are other cases, unsolved cases in Ipswich, and some in kind of other areas, unsolved, where it's very similar, and just so happens to be where Steve Wright moved around and such. And one was Steve Wright's former colleague. and go, right, maybe that's something that we need to think about, because for these 5 women, the way that they were found and everything, David says it bluntly, and he said it bluntly in other things I've seen him talking about this case. This is not somebody who's doing this for the first time. This is someone who's practiced. Because to be able to have it that out of the 5 women, only 3 of them could it be identified how they died and everything, and to be able to have found enough DNA to be able to go, they're linked. He's done this before. He's done it before. So I really respect David Wilson and Paul as well, for writing this book and having the balls to go, all right, government, tell us what you're doing to help the situation. All right, police, what are you doing in order to to be able to answer these questions of previous crimes that haven't been solved? And it's actually really interesting as well, the fact that Ipswich police, they became the epicenter, just the light got shone really brightly on them during this time, obviously. But it's the area of the country where they have the lowest level of police in the area. And that is the area where all of this stuff was happened. And it goes, right, Met Police, what are you going to be doing about that as well? So there's a lot of stuff that this book covers. And I realise I've revealed quite a bit in this, but at the same time I haven't, because I haven't, talked about this, that and the other, but because it's true crime, the stuff is out there, so I haven't revealed anything that hasn't been revealed before, let me put it that way. But yeah, let me just see what I have, because I thought I might do a reading. Where is it? Yes, okay, yeah. Sorry, I marked a page and then I couldn't remember what they covered, so I just had to quickly relook. So there is a woman whose name in this has been changed to Lisa to protect her. And she is known as the one that got away, because she met Steve Wright and she came very close to being a victim, but something stop that from happening, and this is her account of what happened that day. So she doesn't state, just to clarify, exactly what date it was, but here we go. He seemed really nice. He looked like a businessman and he smelled nice too. The first time he picked me up, he was the most decent bloke. It was the middle of winter and I was freezing when he pulled up. He took me to McDonald's and bought me a burger and coffee. When he saw how cold I was, he put his jacket around me. He didn't even want to sleep with me that night, but still paid me £60 and dropped me back at home. He was a very different man when he picked me up late last year. Lisa, her name has been changed, feels lucky to be alive. One night in December 2006, unbeknownst to her, she was to come face to face with a killer, and had it not been for one moment of panic, she could well have become victim number 6. I'm not dumb. I know it can be really dangerous. I've been picking up punters for about 4 years. The first week I worked, I got raped. I've even gone with a bloke who's raped me before. You're scared, but you've got to do it, and hope that he gives you the money before you're attacked. You cross your fingers and say to yourself, please be nice, please be nice. It doesn't help to be naive. You learn quick, like taking advice from the other girls. There was this bloke the girls had warned me about in a van, but when I saw him, he offered me £60 up front. I'd already been waiting for 2 hours, so I thought, stuff it, I'll go with him. He battered me and raped me 3 times in the same night, and he dropped me off with an extra £20 to keep me quiet. But Lisa was smarter now, and she had learned which punters to trust and which not to trust. The second time I saw the businessman guy, I did sleep with him in his car. Again, he was a nice guy. I'd stand on the corner of West End Road and he picked me up. we go to the Tesco car park in Copdock, and he'd do what he had to do and then drop me off near London Road. Sometimes he could be really gentle, but when he wanted to be rough, he could be really rough. I told him a couple of times to back off, and he would. He would always spend about an hour with me. I know he used to see Gemma, Paula, and Annette. Actually, he was a regular to a lot of the girls, but I can't say if he knew Annalie and Tanya. I didn't see him for a while, and then in December last year he resurfaced. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was after Gemma had gone missing. But this time he was different. It was different. He was really scruffy. He looked trampy, was sweating a lot, and he smelt too. This time he took me to his house on London Road, which he had never done before, and instead of spending an hour with me, it was just 15 minutes. Acting really strange, he went to open the door and then called me to follow him inside. He told me to take my clothes off and put them in a pile. His mind was somewhere else. He said he had family problems, but wouldn't say what they were. I didn't know that he had a wife, and the flat didn't look like anyone else lived there. He kept moving about like he was nervous and looked out the window all the time. I just wanted to get on with it. The problem was that he couldn't get hard, and that had never happened before. Then he started pushing on me so hard that I couldn't get up, and it scared me. Then someone in a car came back to the house. He looked out the window and panicked. It was like I was his evil twin brother. "You've got to leave now," the man barked at her. She was glad to leave. She never saw him again. That was until his picture appeared in the paper. So that kind of gives an insight about how, like, the businessman, he was well kept and all that lot. And then when she next saw him, he was in a very different state, and obviously his state of mind. He was very different and quite abusive and such. And yeah, very luckily for her, he panicked and told her to leave. And that's the only reason why she's quite possibly that she's alive today. It's very interesting to look into. Steve Wright, when you look at him, he just looks like anybody. And that's what, it's so terrifying that he's so evil and looks so normal. It's just wow. It's such a hard, sad case. But this book is written with such brutal honesty and so much sensitivity and respect. It deserves to be read. And you know, to the girls, so we have Gemma, Tanya, Annalie, Annette, and Paula. 5 women who had fallen on hard times and were doing what they needed to survive. They should have been protected, and they weren't. And they lost their lives for it. And we should not forget this case. We should not forget their names. And I really hope that for the 15th anniversary in a month's time, that we will see things on the news and such to remember them. But I have a real sinking feeling that we won't, and that's wrong. It's really wrong. But yeah, my heart goes out to them and to Annalie's unborn child. And I want to thank Paul Harrison and David Wilson for writing this book and making sure that their names aren't forgotten. So, those are my thoughts on Hunting Evil by Paul Harrison and David Wilson. An absolutely sensitive, beautifully written portrait about these women, what happened to them, and all of the other sex workers in Ipswich. And a really blunt but brutally honest way of pushing for change. And I you know, there are it's crazy how women, women and men, anybody in the sex industry aren't protected like they should be. Because if a sex worker works by themselves, then that's their own, individual thing. But as soon as two sex workers work together, it's classed as a brothel, and that is illegal. And the other sex worker just be there to protect the first one from being abused and possibly killed. And so to have somebody else there, that then makes it illegal. That's not right. We should be protecting those in the sex industry from being abused and being killed. It's very sad, sinking feeling that the laws and such probably won't change, but they should change to protect those people who are working in an industry that just so happens to be about sex. It's just, yeah, it's sad. It's really sad. But anyway, I've been going on for 35 minutes. I should round this up. So, would I read this again? Yes, I was talking to my sister about it last night, and she actually wants to read this now that I've read it, because I was talking to her about it and such, and our friend Sarah. Yeah, she would like to read this because she's read some of David Wilson's books before. So yeah, I definitely recommend someone. Would I read this again? Yep. Anyway, what's another question I just said? Well, read again and recommend. Yes, definitely. For sure. Yeah, I definitely would recommend and read this again. I think it's gonna be something that's gonna be on my mind for a few days, at the very, very least. And that's not a bad thing. Kind of like, not the same way, but kind of like The Five, where that sat in my gut for like really, like to the point where it nearly gave me stomach aches, kind of gut feeling for a long time. This is sitting in my gut, but it's not necessarily giving me stomach ache. That's kind of where I am with that. Would I read any more David Wilson or Paul Harrison's books? Yeah, definitely would. If they collaborated again on something else, I think that would be really interesting to read. But obviously they collaborated because they happened to be brought together on this one case while it was all happening. So I don't see them writing together again specifically, but if they do, I'd be up to reading that. But any books written by them individually, yeah, I'd definitely be willing to read those. So there we go. So my thoughts on Hunting Evil Inside the Ipswich Serial Murders by Paul Harrison and David Wilson. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is Lady Killers by Tori Telfer. I'm really looking forward to reading this. So this is actually about female serial killers throughout history and why it is that their names have been lost to history, even though their actions are just as bad and evil as their male counterparts, but it's the male counterparts who always get remembered in history. So it's asking, why is there sexism, as it were, when it comes to female serial killers? So yeah, so I'm going to be reading about female serial killers for probably like the next week or so, because it's not that long, a book. But yeah, I will see how I go. So yeah, I'll be back with my thoughts on Lady Killers as soon as I'm done. Thanks guys, bye.